Hello and welcome to Airheads, a not-so-serious look at the serious business of royal rumours, gossip and gowns. I'm Tom.
And I'm Maeve.
And this week we want to wish you a merry, a happy Christmas.
We have just been watching A Very Royal Christmas, the BBC TV special starring Mary Berry, Kate Middleton and Prince William, going about their festive merriment.
And like all of the best Christmas specials, it starts in the middle of summer.
So I guess the premise of the show was that it would have a bit of Mary cooking and it would also have a bit of Kate and Will's charity work. So from what I understand, Will reached out to Mary Berry and asked if they'd do the show together. It was a good idea, I thought.
Yeah, it was a good mix to have. It was very wholesome, and Mary was very good at approaching these kind of serious topics with them.
And from the reviews, people loved it. People were crazy about it. They wanted to become an annual event.
It began back when Kate was opening her Back to Nature garden at RHS Wisley.
So this was back in September, and this was the first time that Mary Berry was meeting Kate, which I was surprised by. And Mary said she was quite nervous, and when she gets nervous, she gets cold, so she had a hot water bottle to keep her warm as she waited for the daunting figure of Kate Middleton in a floral shirt dress to
the Iron
appear.
Duchess.
So immediately, like right off the bat, we've got some of that classic bake-off innuendo. We see them icing some cupcakes with a cream cheese icing that Mary has made, and she says to Kate,
"Do you want to have a squirt on a cake?
Yes, please. Can you show me how to do it first, please?"
So this is absolute typical bake-off humour.
This is the sweet spot.
Yeah. This was, if there were any bake-off fans who are on the fence, they were really drawn in by this.
And that was exactly what the Daily Mail splashed on their website, the squirt line.
They splashed on the squirt?
On Kate the Squirter, yeah.
There's a really nice moment when they're handing these cakes out to the kids to go and serve them. And when one of the girls...
child labourers, the serving staff.
Well, one of the girls just says straight off the bat, "It's my birthday." And Kate very graciously tells her, "Look at all these cakes," which she has then got to go and give to other people for her birthday.
Kate also talks about making birthday cakes for her own kids. And she says, "I love making the cake. It's become a bit of a tradition that I stay up till midnight with ridiculous amounts of cake mix and icing, and I make far too much, but I love it." I'd love to see one of Kate's cakes.
Yeah. I want to know what her style is, like who's she looking to.
We also got to hear the line we spoke about on last week's episode about Louis's first words. It was a little bit different when you hear it in context. Like, she says his first word was a version of Mary, but she did still say that he says, "That's Mary Berry," which I really enjoyed. We also learned another detail about one of Louis's favourite foods. When Kate told Mary Berry, "We grow our own vegetables. We've got carrots, beans, beetroot," a massive favourite. Louis absolutely loves beetroot. And Mary obviously is quite taken with this, because straight away she runs back to her kitchen and concocts a recipe for a sticky beetroot and chocolate cake.
Just for
with
Louis.
The prince in mind.
Especially, I want Louis to like it because he loves beetroot so much.
Mary's next stop is The Passage, which is the UK's largest resource centre for homeless and insecurely housed people, and she brings along Will with her. He's a patron of the charity, and he's been working with them for a long time, quite a few years. He visited with Diana when he was a kid, and he tells Mary that he now talks to his kids, well, George and Charlotte, when they're on the school run, about, when they see someone who's sleeping rough, he wants to kind of try to explain to them how that kind of thing happens.
I was very pleasantly surprised by Will in this segment. Will and Mary had met before. They knew each other from their work on another charity called Child Bereavement UK. But I thought Will seemed so at ease and comfortable in passage, like as if he actually wanted to be there, which isn't something you can always say about him.
Yeah.
That he acquitted himself very well. I thought he was quite natural in conversation, or certainly more natural than he usually is. I thought he had a very good conversation with people where he really seemed to be engaging with them about things like alcohol dependency and the challenges of being a woman sleeping rough. So that kind of stuff was quite nice, actually.
Yeah, he had like a pretty sensitive understanding of alcoholism, and he also didn't try to talk about what it was like to be a woman sleeping rough. He very much let other people talk and, like you said, like listen to what they were saying.
But he also asked like good questions. I felt like so many of the conversations between Mary and Kate, or Mary and other people, or Kate and other people, were so difficult because so many of the questions were these leading questions, and like the first rule of interviewing people is that you don't ask yes or no questions, and everything was like, even Mary was like, oh, and is Kate terribly interested in all the work you do?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's just putting words in somebody's mouth, whereas when you ask a question that leaves it open to the person, you get a much more interesting answer. We saw that even though some of the questions that Mary was asking Will were a little bit stilted, he did manage to squeeze in the opportunity to give some credit to Kate, and he spoke very fondly about her work with mental health particularly, and how that she was the one that saw that his work and her work and Harry's work were all diverging, but that the through point was mental health, and that she was able to bring them together in that way, which was a sweet moment.
He did also reiterate the fact that she does the cooking.
I really enjoyed that after they had this quite heavy discussion, then somebody said that we're going to change the conversation and we got to talk about Will's iced biscuits, because part of this, I guess, was an activity to decorate some sort of biscuits. And Will was typically competitive, but it was fun, like it was funny. And Mary, clearly gunning for that OBE, was very tactful in her judgment when she was asked to render a judgment on Will's biscuits, and she said,
looking at this biscuit, I think he's really got great style about it. He's tried to use all the decoration. I think mine's a bit boring.
And we spoke recently about what Prince George is looking for Christmas, and somebody else is clearly keen to know because they asked Will again, and he said that George has already written his list to Santa, so very early. I presume this was filmed back in like the start of November.
Yeah.
But Will said he loves his drawing, he's a very good drawer, we might get him something for drawing or football.
Yeah, I think Will kind of let slip that he would rather be getting the football stuff, but it was a nice moment. Mary then went on to Liverpool. We knew it was Liverpool because they had a statue of the Beatles.
Yeah.
True Liverpool royalty. And she was off to visit The Brink, which is Action on Addiction's dry bar. So it's a place where people who are coping with addiction can go. There's obviously no alcohol, it's a dry bar, but they can share their experiences and struggles.
On the day that Kate was visiting, they had special Christmas activities planned, so the families were wrapping up some sort of Christmas boxes, and they were having mocktails, including a special fruity one. I think it was called a lime berry that Mary Berry had created for them. And there was this really good bit where Mary and Kate were serving the drinks, and Kate said it reminded her of her time when she was waitressing in college.
Were you good?
No, I was terrible.
It felt like Kate's most genuine moment from the whole of this show, almost.
Yeah.
And it was very nice. I felt like, we know Kate doesn't really like public speaking, and you could see her almost like watching herself slightly in some of the conversations, but in this, you really did feel like it was a kind of fond memory for her.
And then at the end, we got their early Christmas party for the people who were going to be working over the festive period, which was held in the Rosewood Hotel in London. And it included nurses, people from the NHS, from the fire brigade, and then there were people from the Shout text crisis helpline, from Child Bereavement UK, the Irish Guards, lots of different charities and charity workers. And as well as that, the Great British Bake Off winner Nadia Hussain was on hand to help out, particularly in a roulade competition that Mary had orchestrated for the very competitive Cambridges.
We know they're both competitive, and Will in particular, actually, I thought Kate might be the one to kind of get a bit focused.
Yeah, at one point, Nadia offered to help him, and he said, oh, go on, she's not watching.
Has he said that before?
As he's cheating, Mary asks Kate if Will ever cooks for her, and her response was just fantastic. She said,
bolognese for breakfast.
There was obviously a lot of hype
University
around
days
this
used to
before
cook all
it
sorts of meals. I think
started.
that's what he was trying to impress me,
There was an
Mary.
interview in
Things
the
like
Mail
bolognese
last weekend
sauce
with Mary
and things like
Berry,
that.
who was talking about Will and Kate's relationship, and she said, I was so impressed. They really are a pigeon couple, which apparently is a reference to pigeons mating for life.
I mean, I think that's probably a really nice thing if you kind of like live in the countryside and pigeons are like nice, healthy animals.
Surely there are nicer animals than pigeons that mate for life that you could refer to. I would be pretty unimpressed if somebody likened me to a pigeon. But she talked about how it was just lovely observing them for those 3 days. When they're together, he's constantly touching her arm and looking over at her, smiling, and she's the same with him. It was very sweet to see because it was so natural, which is just overkill, really, Mary. But it did come to mind when there was one clip that people have been talking about a lot. It comes late in the episode at the Christmas party when Kate and Will are talking to a number of the guests, and Will appears to be putting his hand on Kate's shoulder, and she seems to shrug it off quite rapidly, quite forcefully.
When we were first looking at it, I wanted to be kind of charitable. I wanted to explain it away, and then I watched it a second time, and it really did seem to me like a get off me.
Yeah, we did a poll on Instagram, and that seemed to be the consensus with our followers as well. And I think it was particularly interesting to me because clearly they would have had plenty of other footage they could use instead of that, so you wonder why it was included at all. But it also struck me because so often we've seen these like stupid viral clips, for instance, of Harry and Meghan on the balcony at Trooping the Colour, when people thought that Harry sort of sternly addressed her or something, and it was again like 2 or 3 seconds of footage, and it was analysed to death. We had all the body language experts coming in giving a sort of thesis on the briefest of clips. But with this, I feel like the coverage has been notably different. It did get a write-up in the Mail, and it was insane to see the response from the real Cambridge stands. Like, whenever we talk about this, we get like 1-star reviews. But honestly, to see how they were responding to the people who had tweeted this out in the first place and getting really personal with them, it was, you know, all the worst parts of royal watcher culture.
Yeah, very personal and nasty, I thought.
But it was a strange moment, and I'll be interested to see if it's an enduring one that people remember. But that wasn't the only festive royal content we've been watching this week.
No, we had, very excitingly, the new instalment of A Christmas Prince. This one is A Christmas Prince, the Royal Baby. But we weren't that impressed.
I mean, I'm sure most people listening to this are familiar with the Christmas Prince franchise on Netflix. It came out in 2017, the first one. It was a bit of a phenomenon. People were obsessed with how bad it was, how
I was obsessed with it.
Good bad it was. It was kind of a Netflix take on the Hallmark Lifetime Christmas movies, and yeah, Tom and I were both totally obsessed with it.
It was kind of the first wave in this like new Meghan Markle inspired genre.
Yeah, honestly, Meghan created this whole new genre.
Or at least breathed new life into it.
Yeah, because she obviously did a few of the Hallmark Lifetime type movies, And who knew that they would owe her such a debt? Because basically, since she has become involved in the royal family, every royal Christmas movie is trying to retell the story of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle.
And you can just tell that they know it doesn't get more perfect than the real life story of Harry and Meghan. So they kind of try to just use elements of it with varying degrees of success.
I love that, like, we've watched a few different kinds of royal Christmas movies, and it's basically always this template of the party prince, the playboy prince, who has a British accent, although he may not be a British prince. He may be the prince of any number of made-up countries. In this case, it's Aldovia, but they always have that clipped, posh English accent, which is so funny. And almost always, well, certainly in all the ones we've watched, the woman is a commoner, she's an American, she has a very different way of doing things. So, you know, straight away we're getting the Meghan and Harry connection. And I thought it was particularly, like, the reason Tom and I love this one so much is because Amber is a blogger, just like Meghan.
Yeah.
And she starts out in the first movie as an investigative reporter.
Investigative blogger.
Who is sent by her newspaper or website or whatever to go and infiltrate the Aldovian royal family and find out, like, what the deal is, do a profile of this Aldovian prince, Prince Richard. And it's so funny. But anyway, then last year we had the royal wedding, and now we're back with the royal baby.
They seem to be of the opinion that no one is interested in just watching the relationship between these two people, or...
It's mad, isn't it? Because, like, so much of what they do in these movies has nothing to do with the royal couple. Like, it's all this boring, like, economic, political stuff that, you know, the people watching these movies aren't here for that stuff. I want, like, in the wedding movie, I wanted it to be all about the wedding planning. In this royal baby movie, I wanted it to be about the pregnancy.
But it wasn't. It was about this crazy storyline of the ancient treaty with the neighbouring country, Penglia. So we got visiting royals from Penglia who were in town to sign an old scroll which would renew the treaty, which they do every 100 years. And there was an added thing of, if it wasn't signed, not only would the countries be at war, but there would be a curse on the first royal child born after the treaty was failed to be signed.
The treaty is missing, and if we don't find it, our baby is cursed.
They didn't seem, like, terribly stressed about this, though. Like, they still had plenty of time to, you know, go ice skating and play this sort of weird royal family board game.
It was an ancient Aldovian board game that made. It was a Christmas, you had to decorate a Christmas tree made of wood. But they also managed to get archery in, which is a big theme in these films for some reason.
I really enjoyed all of the very obvious references to Meghan Markle's pregnancy. Okay, let's count them. So straight away, right out the gate, when she was pregnant, we had the infamous double-handed bump cradle. Although it went unremarked upon. I thought she'd get some of the pushback that Meghan did. I thought some people would be like, God, who does she think she is, holding that bump with two hands?
Oh, but she's totally beloved. That's actually another theme of this movie, is the Penglians are so jealous of her being beloved by her people, probably because she still runs Amber's blog.
Yeah, part of the reason people love her is because she's a relatable queen with her blog. We love her blog, and we wish the Tig could continue to exist in the royal sphere. But anyway, like Meghan, Amber and Richard do not want to learn the sex of their baby. They want to keep it as a surprise.
And they even looked into the possibility of hypnobirthing.
We also saw Amber having a baby shower, although it was so tacky and Meghan would hate it.
It's so stupid because they have these recurring characters who absolutely 100% didn't need to be in this film, of the people that planned the wedding from the last movie. They came back to do the baby shower, and one of the characters is, all he does is say things are tacky, and then he organised this naff as hell, Frozen themed baby shower.
Everything covered in tinsel. It was extremely
Environmentalist
untig.
nightmare.
Yes, that too. And again, like Meghan and Harry, Amber and Richard discuss wanting the baby to have a normal life.
It's very important to her that the baby learns to ride the subway, despite the fact that Aldovia being about 500 years in the past.
And we see her doing yoga, just like Meghan. I liked especially that at the end, after the baby is finally born with 1.5 minutes to go, Richard introduces the baby to the world and he's carrying the baby, just like Harry carried Archie when Harry and Meghan first introduced Archie to all of us.
They do have a bit on Harry and Meghan, though, because during labour, Amber manages to solve the mystery of the missing treaty by sending various other characters off to dungeons and whatnot. She puts it all together.
Well, luckily they have the entire cast stationed in the room to watch her give birth. These visiting royals have nothing better to do than sit around while she's in labour.
Is that an Aldovian custom, do you think?
I do think, though, this should be the last one of these movies. I really enjoyed it, and I like the comparisons with Meghan. Obviously we're going to be on board with that stuff, but I don't need any more of these ridiculously complicated plots.
I think what's going to happen is, because we get to see this ancient map, which allowed us an insight into possibly Netflix's plans, because it situates Aldovia in the same extended royal festive universe as the other Netflix Christmas movie, The Princess Switch, where Vanessa Hudgens plays 2 characters, and she's going to play 3 characters in the sequel, which is coming out next year. So I think once they've done the sequel to that, they might have a crossover film or some kind of visiting moment. Or maybe we'll get a whole movie set in Penglia.
And there was also the overlap in the most recent Vanessa Hudgens Christmas movie, The Night Before Christmas, when they had that hideous giant acorn Christmas tree decoration.
Yeah.
Which is from Christmas Prince.
Yeah.
So we've got another point there. So Vanessa Hudgens may have to play quadruple duty. The Irish Times columnist Patrick Frayne wrote a very, very, very funny piece about Christmas Prince, the Royal Baby, and if you haven't read it, you should go check it out because it's hilarious.
It's really, really good. We did manage to tear our eyes away from the TV screen long enough to read Royal Holiday by Jasmine Guillory.
You might know Jasmine Guillory from her other romance novels. This is her 4th one now, and they're all interconnected, much like the Netflix Royal Universe. This book has kind of an interesting backstory, because last year, you might remember, there were some reports that Doria Ragland, Meghan's mother, had been invited by the Queen to spend Christmas at Sandringham, and everybody got very excited. And on Twitter, a librarian called Margaret Willison tweeted, "I now need a charming romance about the single mother of a new duchess falling in love with an appropriately aged royal retainer while spending Christmas at Sandringham." This librarian, Margaret Wilson, is friends with Jasmine Guillory, and she replied, "I volunteer as tribute." And then just over a year later, the book comes out. Instead of Doria Ragland, we have Vivian Forrest, who is the mother of Maddie Forrest, who was in Jasmine Guillory's last book, The Wedding Party.
You don't have to have read that, though. I came to this book without having read any of the others in the series.
Yeah.
And while I kind of felt like there might be more going on with these characters, it didn't impact the story at all.
Maddie is a stylist, and she is spending Christmas in the UK because she has been roped in to style the Duchess, who is unnamed but is very obviously Meghan Markle.
We'll just say she's a hugger.
And she's from California, and she loves wearing boat neck navy dresses. So make up your own mind about that. But anyway, Vivian is Maddie's mother, and Maddie invites her to come along for the trip, and she does. And oh my god, this book is so fun.
Yeah, and it's so romantic as well.
I know, if you're looking for a book to read around Christmas time, I would say this is pretty much the perfect Christmas romance. I know Jasmine Guillory has been a controversial figure in the romance community, and some people are unhappy with how she is positioned as the inventor of black romance. If you're interested in other royal romance novels, you should check out Alyssa Cole's. They're very sexy. Anyway, so in Royal Holiday, Maddie and Vivian go to stay at Sycamore Cottage, where Vivian meets and falls in love with Malcolm Hudson, who is the Queen's private secretary and has been described by Jasmine Guillory as Idris Elba, basically.
Yeah, he's a total hunk. There's one catch as this romance begins to blossom, and that's that Vivian's only there till New Year's Day.
I love the parallels between Vivian and Doria. Like Doria, Vivian is a social worker. She's from California. She's a single mother. She's great at her job. She is very honest and direct with her daughter. They're very close.
She's all about talking things out, getting on the same page.
Yeah. And there's so many really romantic moments. Like, they write letters to each other. They go horse riding in Sandringham. All the descriptions of Sandringham are just, like, fabulously Christmassy. And made it even sound like Christmas at Sandringham might be nice and not the sort of cold and miserable experience that we've heard about.
And which it almost definitely is. But this version of it is really nice. I mean, they do talk actually in the book about how cold all the rooms are, which, you know, allows for lots of very romantic roaring fires and lots of cozy blankets.
And like every time you walk into the kitchen, there's fresh scones with jam and clotted cream. Which is, oh my God, amazing.
But they do have a lot of like very good conversations that you should be having when you get kind of an American character and a British character talking about the royals and all the differences and the similarities, especially two black characters talking about how they have got to where they are in life.
Yeah, I really liked those conversations between them where Malcolm was talking about what it's like being the only senior black aide in the royal family, and when they talk as well about the sort of uneasy relationship that they have as black people with the idea of monarchy, which, you know, I was 1000% on board with. It was also very informative for me on the Christmas traditions that do not exist in America. Like, that Americans didn't know what mince pies were. They don't have mince pies over there.
Yeah, that was a real eye-opener for me. That it's not quite the global village I thought it was. But if you want to turn your mind to reality, I thought we could go over our standout moments from 2019.
Yeah, given that this will be our second last episode before the end of the year, we wanted to look back on the most memorable moments from the year.
Obviously, it goes without saying, everyone's most memorable moment is the birth of Airheads.
I know, and when I was thinking back over the things that happened before we started doing the podcast, I was like, wow, we would have had a blast covering some of these.
Oh, yeah.
For instance, my first moment I want to talk about is Prince Philip's car crash in January and his truly bizarre letter he sent to the woman he collided with.
I mean, this is the perfect metaphor for the royal year as it was. We had a car crash followed by a very awkward statement.
And as well as that, him being seen driving around even though he'd surrendered his license.
Yeah. It helps that later in the year we got a kind of rehabilitation of Philip in The Crown, and everyone was suddenly like, oh, what an interesting and thoughtful man.
And in general, there were so many royal car crashes this year. So many members of the royal family, like extended family, their staff. Everybody was ramming into people. Very irresponsible driving.
And these are the people driving our country. But in much more celebratory fashion, we had Meghan's baby shower in February, and just generally every time she went to America was a real standout moment.
Oh my God. Whenever Meghan goes to New York, people lose their fucking minds, and I'm obsessed with it. I loved Meghan's baby shower. I loved the like hysteria around it. Well, I hated it, but I loved that her simply hanging out with her friends who happened to be very rich and famous made people go into total meltdown. Do you remember the like breathless minute by minute almost coverage of her flying on the private jet with Amal Clooney, her staying in that swanky Mark hotel, going to that fabulous penthouse for the baby shower, which was paid for by Serena Williams, and then we saw every guest arriving with their enormous gifts. We saw like all of this possibly SpawnCon that may have been destined for the party, like all those suitcases. And then later Daniel Martin posting the picture of those iced biscuits that they had at the baby shower. I just loved all of it. And I loved Meghan's big sunglasses, which are the sunglasses on which the Airheads artwork is based. and her vintage coat, and then later when she was getting the plane and she wore that Rectify hat.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Love Rectify.
Yeah, that was really like her yoga class full of incredibly protective people who are like, no one's gonna get at Meghan while she's here.
Yeah, it was like when she went back to New York then later this year to see Serena Williams playing the tennis match, Americans huddled around her and they knew they had to protect their girl, and nobody said a word about her at the yoga class. It was so good.
And do you remember just like the increasingly desperate lines you'd see in Daily Mail stories where it's like, if you have a photo of Meghan on this flight, if you have a photo of Meghan doing yoga, just get in touch, please, we need it, we'll give you anything. And America put their arms around her.
Next up, the sensational launch of the Sussex Royal Instagram.
Meghan's return to social media after being banned.
I can only imagine the great relief on her face when she was able to share those inspirational quotes that she'd been stockpiling in the years since she had to say goodbye to Meghan Markle's Instagram. Yeah, straight away loved their blue background with the text posts, loved the borders, so influencer style, loved the black and white imagery Meghan is so fond of, loved the Beyonce style drops of behind the scenes, never before seen content.
And in the early days I loved the flawless grammar. Unfortunately, that seems to have gone.
And of course, Instagram was what they used to reveal Archie's birth to all of us. Archie's birth obviously being the biggest highlight of the year for us. We were thrilled to see those fabulous pictures of Meghan and Harry and Archie and Doria and the Queen with the baby. It was so sweet.
And Archie's foot.
Archie's foot with the forget-me-nots.
I had so much fun when we were tracking down those forget-me-nots in the grounds of
in
Frogmore House.
Yeah. What a great moment for us. And as well as visiting Frogmore House, we also paid a visit to Houghton Hall
to look for a very different kind of flower. Yeah. The Rose Hanbury rumours, this is Will's alleged affair. That, for me, was the real, I need to do a podcast. I was so obsessed with that, and I was so obsessed with the fact that no one was talking about it.
Yeah, it just made it all the more intriguing. Who is the Marchioness of Cholmondeley? I can't believe I can now spell perfectly without checking the Marchioness of Cholmondeley. And you can too, probably.
Yeah, well, I've always been able to do that.
Yeah, that whole maybe scandal and the silence around it, and then reports that Will had made efforts to quash the story through his lawyers. All of that was so fascinating. And of course, we loved our visit to Houghton Hall, which is a lovely place to visit, by the way, if you're ever in Norfolk.
Yeah. And all the art in the grounds is cool as well. I loved the polo match that we got to see in July, where the Cambridges and Sussexes united to have a picnic.
Yeah, the first time Meghan brought Archie out in public, as well as Kate bringing George, Charlotte and Louis. This was so interesting because, you know, we were all wondering, was there some kind of tension between Harry and Will? And rather than anybody really looking at what their interactions were like while they were playing or after the match, it was all eyes on Meghan, Kate and all the kids.
Yeah.
And for us, it was certainly all eyes on Prince Louis.
Oh, he was the standout from this. With his kind of drunken pointing, his wearing sunglasses and trying to get Meghan's attention.
Oh my god, those pictures are so funny.
And Meghan was wearing total, like, California blogger
Oh my
cosplay.
god, that olive colour dress with the sunglasses.
And her hair down.
Just so laid back, Cali girl. Chic, right?
So cool.
I think, though...
Less cool.
Yeah, probably like my low point of the year. I mean, so much of the criticism of Harry and Meghan has been totally over the top. But I felt like the private jet stuff just went fucking nuts this summer. Although it did give us possibly the most gloriously petty royal moment of the year.
Yeah, I think this is probably my favourite moment of the whole year, was when Will and Kate and the kids took a budget flight to Balmoral.
This was like exquisite in how absurdly petty it was. Like, to make sure that they were photographed on the tarmac, the kids lugging the bags. You know, we talked about this so much at the time, but those pictures are unforgettable.
I mean, people had a go at Harry in that documentary for saying that Will and him are on different paths, but I'm sorry, this moment from Will was much clearer declaration of how he felt about his brother.
Yeah. Speaking of the documentary, though, I would say the second biggest moment of the year was Harry and Meghan announcing their lawsuit and Harry's jaw-dropping statement about the press treatment and all the criticism of Meghan. Seeing that statement on my phone for the first time was so shocking.
I think you screamed when you saw it.
And, you know, obviously this is something that's going to be going on for a few years, and the lawsuit is going to take a long time to get through the courts and all that, if it does end up going to court. But just initially, that statement was so unprecedented and so unlike what we would expect from the royals that it was just a total wow moment. I think probably the smartest royal project of the year was Meghan's Smart Set collection for SmartWorks.
I got a sense for the first time with any royal that, oh wow, they're working really hard. Like, I was like, God, how is she doing this and this and this? And hasn't she just had a baby? Oh my God.
Yeah, and it kind of made me think this is work that has a very tangible impact. You know, we see so often royals going to events and giving speeches and meeting people, and we see nice pictures and the pictures on front pages, and you know that that's bringing attention to the work of the charity. But this was actually a project, a collection of clothes and bags that had a very direct impact on the charity that it was in aid of. And as well as that, it meant that so many of us could get something that came with that, you know, Markle sparkle for a very reasonable price, and something that would also be making a contribution to help less advantaged women.
Yeah, it was, like you said, it was such a smart thing to do.
It made me really excited for what Meghan's going to do next, because I felt like after the Grenfell cookbook together, which we were obsessed with last year as well, and now to have this, you think she's really switched on and you're excited about what's going to happen next. I mean, I'm sure it'll come as no surprise to anybody what our biggest, most memorable moment of the year was Prince Andrew's absolute shit show interview on BBC Newsnight with Emily Maitlis in November.
Yeah, I feel like, as far as I've seen, this has been a totally unifying moment. Like, quite often people have debates around other aspects of royal life, but everyone agrees that this was a fucking nightmare.
You know, it came at a time when this story was quieting down, when people were sort of forgetting about it, and because he went into this interview, it resulted in the most spectacular backlash. If he hadn't said anything, he'd still be hanging out at those Pitch at Palace events. I'm sure Beatrice would be on her way to a Windsor Castle wedding. The fallout from this is absolutely stunning.
And I mean, forget just in royal circles, this is one of the stupidest things anyone has ever done.
I thought as well, though, we should talk a little bit about our Fit for a Queen and Fit for a King of the year.
So one of my absolute favourites was Meghan in the Mayamiko dress and wedges at their first event in South Africa when they were starting their tour of Southern Africa. I thought this was such a good way of like setting the tone for the whole rest of the tour. It was a very thoughtfully chosen piece. Obviously it looked great. You know, it was monochrome to give space to all the bright colours of the people there who were performing for them and greeting them. It was perfect encapsulation of Meghan and I assume Harry's approach to royal duties.
I would say my favourite Meghan outfit of the year came from before we started doing the podcast in March, when she visited Canada House in, oh my God, an astonishing green coat and dress by Erdem, and it had just been on the catwalk for the autumn winter collections a few weeks before. It was the first look, And I was fascinated as to whether Meghan saw it and she wanted it, or Dem knew Meghan was going to wear it and they put it as the first look. But she looked so gorgeous. I love when she wears bright colours, and the embroidery on it was beautiful. But we should also say our fit for a king this year. I mean, who else is it going to be but Will? The one thing Will did unquestionably right this year was to wear that sherwani on the Pakistan tour. This traditional green sherwani designed by Noshemian was a total knockout.
It was such a good colour on him. You just don't ever think of him wearing any kind of strong colour.
Yeah.
But it really worked with his skin tone and distracted from his hair.
It was so dramatic. It was so stylish. He has never looked better.
Yeah.
I was hoping he would learn from this and start adding a little more flourishes into his normal clothes, and he hasn't yet, but there's still hope for 2020.
I will give a shout out to Kate Middleton's sexy christening outfit.
I'm gonna ignore that. We did want to end with some fabulous tips courtesy of the TIG on how to ensure you have a magical Christmas. So as we know, Meghan and Harry are going to be spending Christmas privately with Archie away from Sandringham. We don't know if that's going to be in America or if it's at home in Frogmore, but it is likely that Doria Ragland will be joining them wherever it is. And apparently they are going to be cooking themselves. A source told Grazia magazine they want to cut through the noise, curl up by the fire and just enjoy each other's company. And I also liked this detail that Meghan will be wrapping all the Christmas presents herself, and everyone's going to get her trademark calligraphy on their gift tags and in their cards.
Even Andrew?
Luckily, Grazia did resurrect a post from 2014 when Meghan shared her festive tips on the TIG. I thought we'd just share some of them with you. So if you're still decorating your home, why not trim the outline of a mirror or a beautiful piece of artwork with garlands or magnolia branches?
Oh, why not?
That is like Instagram ready, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you come to serve the food, just make sure you keep it simple with an all-white tablecloth, runner and napkins. Accent with gilded plates and napkin rings, and use a stylish set of cutlery. I'm now very stressed about whether Meghan would think my cutlery is stylish.
I also find it very amusing that she thinks everyone has gilded plates. Guess we gotta get some gilded plates done. Her suggestion for the perfect centerpiece is to turn a drinking cup or mug into a low vase, filling it with savoury herbs or all white flowers. I mean, I'm sure that would look spectacular if Meghan did it, but if I just grabbed a mug and put a load of oregano in it and stuck it at the centre of the table, I don't think you'd be very impressed.
I mean, I'd applaud the effort, but I really liked this one. Purchase silver serving trays, platters and nut bowls from flea markets or Etsy.
This just makes me so fascinated as to whether Meghan does a lot of Etsy shopping now.
Yeah, what's her Etsy username now?
And then in terms of what to serve, Meghan suggests almond milk spiced holiday cocktails, which is written with all caps, so you know it's a recipe she had elsewhere on the TIG. And use leftover potatoes to make maple glazed wedges. Canada.
I've never heard of anything more Canadian. Maple glazed wedges. I unfortunately can't have anything with almond milk in it, but I really want to find out a way that I can make spiced holiday cocktails.
Just make it with regular milk. Well, I guess, isn't that what eggnog is, kind of?
Meghan's milky mess.
Oh, no, don't. It's horrible. Anyway, we hope you all have the merriest of Merry Christmases. We will have a special episode next week where we will be doing some royal fortune telling. So we hope you come back and listen to what is in store for the royals in 2020.
If you like the episode, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts.
You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at AirheadsPod and on Facebook at Airheads.
Thanks so much for listening.
Merry Christmas.
And Happy New Year.
Things like bolognese sauce and things like that.